Welcome to Green Building Matters, the original and most popular podcast focused on the green building movement. Your host is Charlie Cicchetti, one of the most credentialed experts in the green building industry and one of the few to be honored as a lead fellow. Each week, Charlie welcomes a green building professional from around the globe to share their war stories, career advice, and unique insight into how sustainability is shaping the built environment. So settle in, grab a fresh cup of coffee, and get ready to find out why green building matters.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the next episode of the Green Building Matters podcast. I'm your host, Charlie Cicchetti. Once a week, I've got the easy job. I get to interview a green building professional somewhere in the world. And coming to us today from the Minneapolis area, we've got Rachelle. She's a longtime lead fellow. Can't wait to unpack her story more and her green building journey. Rachelle, how you doing today?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I know our paths have crossed several times, and it was time to get you on the podcast. So here we are. I love to ask all my podcast guests, take us back. Where did you grow up and end up going to college?
I grew up in a very small town in Iowa, and I went to Iowa State University. And some of the things that I, kind of talked about is that my sustainability journey started in college during the 80s. And it seemed like in that era, everything was just fake, and one of the things that I saw when I moved to Minneapolis, there were projects being built that just fit the like real marble or something. Like, why wouldn't you use real marble instead of fake marble, So it was like a weird time, And so when I came to Minneapolis, I was during the recession. So instead of just taking any job, I worked in retail until I could find an architecture firm. And so that firm ended up being LHB. And I know you know Rick Carter.
Oh, yeah.
And so it was a really good time for me to be at LHB. And we were working. It was at that time, it was a perfect time for me to join because we had a lot of business who were willing to look at healthy materials. We were working with chemists, looking at products. We worked with a firm in New York with that. That was working really hard at identifying and replacing toxic chemicals being used in design materials that were unhealthy and actually making people sick. And then we, kept going. And so it was 1995. And it was a very small business in Minneapolis with Rick and our group. And we did a lot of business of affordable housing market. One of the things that happened during that time was that there was a brand new veterans center built in Minnesota that had to be torn down because of sick building syndrome. And it was a brand new building. It was full of toxin. Created an awareness how important sustainability design practices were. I ended up serving on some boards at that time. So we were working, the Minneapolis office had engineers, architects, interior designers, landscape, and all of the engineers. So we were small, but we were really effective. And so another story was we had a woman client that came to our office who was really sick. And we spent a lot of time figuring out where to build her house so that she could get better. And so we had a lot to learn about healthy building materials. As we were designing her home, we tell her to ask her doctor at each appointment what to help us for what we could do next. She stayed in that house for 13 years. And after she got better, she was able to move downtown and live in a condo. And so, those are some things that, early things that we were doing. And we were the ones in the Minneapolis, being in Minneapolis, we were the ones that were really looking at all these sustainability things. So those are things that we were working on at that time.
He was on our podcast before, long time, not just green building, but lead enthusiast. And it's great to hear you had early influence on not just green buildings, but healthy buildings. And I know you really are partial to the material side of things. So you were getting exposed to sustainability. When did you first see LEED? I mean, what was like the first LEED project you worked on?
It was the Green Institute in Minneapolis. And it's kind of funny, but that project, we did geothermal wells, and I'm jumping around here, but we designed the project, we built the project. It's a really cool project also. We were very proud about it. We could make mistakes, there were a lot of many mistakes of that because we didn't know what we were doing. We wanted to have the solar panels on the roof, but the things didn't work. And, we had all kinds of things that we were interested in. And so anyway, we were then, looking at the geothermal, and then there wasn't a furnace in this building because of the geothermal thing. And so when the inspector came in to look at the building, he said, you can't do this. You have to have a furnace. And nobody knew what that meant, because they didn't know what geothermal was. And so there's those kinds of things too, that we were kind of leading all of the projects that we were working on. And so that was one that, we did do a lot of experiments, basically. And you could do that at that time, And so this is when I'm still working with Rick and the LHB people. And it was a time again that, we could really look at things differently than we can now.
Yeah. You've been in this a long time. I know over 25 years of pushing all this sustainability. And so let's connect the dots a little more on as you were building your career. I know you're a fan of credentials along the way. And, you're a LEED fellow, one of the first LEED fellows. So what did that mean at the time? 2013?
2013. Was it 2013? Probably, yes. That meant a lot to me because I'm so proud of my sustainability efforts, and to be in the third class of getting a LEED certification. I just think I'm very proud of that. And I'm also an ASID fellow. So those things are really, they mean a lot to me, I guess. I think that, some of my other proudest achievements are, things like my primary practice is in workplace sustainability and design, human health and well-being. I think one of my favorite design projects was designing houses for the American lawn. We talked about that a little bit. That's when I became involved with indoor air quality because many of the houses were constructed with toxic chemicals. When we first got involved with the association, they were constructed, or they showed us a presentation I'll never forget. This is from the American Lung Association. And so there was a doctor, and he was doing a presentation, and he showed us what is happening with some of the things that we were doing before. So his motivation was, he talked about how, it was like the Disney time at that time. And kids would just be sitting down on the floor and they're watching Disney films and they're sitting on carpet. And he showed us that he had a micro thing, he could, as they vacuumed the floor, they were sitting on. It was shocking to see what was unseen in the carpet that those kids were sitting on. So that was an eye-opener for me because I never thought about it, And so our purpose was to make sure houses we were building for the Lung Association were made out of non-toxic products, more cork flooring, no carpet, new equipment like filtering. And then this project opened the doors to do more design work related to the housing market because our home designs were becoming noticed and people are starting asking for healthy housings. I happen to be the lead designer on those homes. And one of my favorite homes is located in Madeline Island on Lake Superior in Wisconsin.
Those sound like some fantastic early healthy building, healthy home projects. And fast forward to where we are now and such a focus. So let's connect some dots when it comes to mentors. You mentioned Rick and some others. But as you look back, is there anyone that maybe opened a door for you, you looked up to, maybe you followed their work? Any other mentors you want to give a shout out to?
Yeah, one of them is there. It's kind of sad, but John Conrad, he died, I guess. Yeah. And his name is John Cobb. I can't get his name. But yeah, there's been a lot of people in my life that I really appreciate in helping me in my journey. There's people that have gone before me, and I really appreciate what they have done to help me.
Yeah, no, mentors are so important. And sometimes just this influence, encouragement, maybe opening a door. Okay, so as you look back on your career, though, what's on the highlight reel? What else, Rachelle, stands out?
Well, I'm a person that likes to meet with, our clients. I really want to be a person that can help the designers do better. It's interesting sometimes, where the interior designers don't know what to do. And I'm hoping that at this point in time, that we have so many certifications that we can do. We can, we need to know what the credentials are for the, toxins. And I think that sometimes the interior designers don't get as much recognition that they should get. And so I've been trying to work on that, just to help them become more integrated into the projects and understanding why these credentials need to be done with the projects,
Yeah.
Like the EPs and declare labels and, looking at all of those kinds of credentials. And so that they know that it's a lot easier now because the people that are making the materials are now able to have credentials and therefore having non-toxic projects.
No, we keep going back to non-toxic. I want to get some pro tips on you on that subject in a minute. But okay, so connect the dots. You've worked at a few other amazing firms, and then I want you to get us to present day. So any other highlights, some great firms you worked at, and then let's talk about present day.
Yeah, I started with LHD. I was there for 15 years. And then I went to MSR. And then I went to, which was a great group of people. And then I went to Schoessler, which was also a really great opportunity. And then I went to, my last place was BKV. So I've jumped around a little bit, but I was at LHB for the longest time. And and I have a shout out for MSR for the efforts that those guys are doing. And that was where I felt I was able to really explain why we would want to do sustainable stuff. And one of the partners there, he wanted to understand and what that was all about. And so it was kind of hard for him to understand. But by the end of the day, he had flipped all the way around. And so that was, just keeping the faith that, you can do this, so.
It's really cool. So let's talk present day. So tell us about your firm. What kind of projects do you work on, and how do you approach sustainability and or healthy buildings?
My roles have kind of been all over the place, I guess, So the things that I'm most, proud of from that aspect, when I was working with the city office building that I mentioned before, I think that project really gave the team that I was working with an opportunity to build this amazing building. And I feel that was a big project for me to work on. And I had great people around me to, make that building as well as we could,
Yeah, let's talk about that one a little more. You and I talked about before we started the podcast. So what made that project special right there in downtown Minneapolis?
Well, for one thing, it has lots of windows, so daylight. We have solar panels up there. We just had all kinds of technology. And unfortunately, it was built right before the COVID. And so then when COVID was there, it was being still built. And then COVID, just nobody's going to go to the office anymore, So I hope that at some point they want to go back to the new building. That was kind of hard, because it's just such a nice building, and we had all kinds of technology that goes into that. It was a project that I'd never done, and so I learned a lot about, like I had to work with the police. I had to work with some of the other groups that would be in that building. So that's basically what that.
What a great project. We'll try to put a link in our podcast show notes so everybody can see that project. And so you've talked a lot about, the healthy material side of things, healthy buildings, LEED. When it comes to maybe pursuing a certification like LEED or WELL or FitWell, or just, are clients kind of ask you for it? Or are you always bringing it up to say, hey, this is an option? How does that discussion happen?
Well, I always start with, looking at with the client. And it seems like for me, that's where, like with the interior designers and they're trying to figure out what, the materials are going to be, they have a hard time sometimes not being able to figure out what credentials they need, or if they are going to, like I said, like just doing things that I think it's more that the clients don't understand, but the interior and the designers are in the same place. So they don't understand what those like HPDs declare and all of these other things, that it's so easy now. When it was 1995, there was nothing like that. And so I've been trying to work with the teams to make them that they can be successful in talking to their clients and telling them that all of these products that you're specifying are actually non-toxic. And so that's kind of, one of the things that I've been trying to, make it easier for the designers and the architects. And it's still going to be, things that they're not going to do, and I want to make sure that can get easier as we keep doing sustainability.
Absolutely. We got to keep pushing it. Show there's options. This is what we should do, not just the minimum. So I love to ask this next question, Rachelle. Where do you think green buildings are shifting next? Or in other words, what are you kind of excited about that's coming at us down the road?
I think it's it's one thing. I think there will be more people talking about embodied carbon, which is when, you calculate the ESG and what the new materials are like right now. We're in a time where interior designers are able to find products that are non-toxic, and that demand will only increase and the general public becomes more educated. We also have and will continue to develop a lot of mandated certification requirements. There will be more dependence on solar, wind, and new energy sustainability. And then what we have to do fairly quickly is to really take charge of developing new opportunities, approaches, and products within the profession to motivate and educate clients. The general public on the importance of all future building and remodeling incorporating sustainability processes and products regardless of cost. And so I think, that's what I'm thinking about. And yeah.
I see that too. It's, we've made a lot of progress. You've been doing this a while, I've been doing it a while, but I agree with all of that. So let's get to know you a little bit more here on the podcast. A few rapid fire questions, if you will. What would you say is your specialty or gift?
My God. I think, I really feel like I'm a good mentor and especially the ones that are just coming out of school. I feel like that, a couple things that I would say is we need people to come together, understand what sustainability is, and knowing that they are doing their projects and be successful. And in the end, at the end of the day, I think we just need to keep mentoring people.
Any tips on how to be a good mentor? Is there a certain cadence, certain questions you ask to really get to the source of truth? Any tips on how to be a really good mentor?
I think it's hard to be, you don't just get a mentor, you just have, but if you see if you're working with people on their projects and they don't know enough that they can do, I think that we just have to always think about like why do we mentor is because they need to continue to be the next generation, basically.
Great wisdom there. I love it. So do you have any good habits or routines or rituals you could share with us that you really follow?
Oh, rituals. Well, some of the things that I kind of think about, I guess, I have 30 years of learning and contributing behind me. I found that I am a person who primarily mentors and teaches others, and I'm completely dedicated to sustainability. My mentoring extends beyond the professional world. I've been fortunate enough to come from generations of ancestors who take care of the land and attend to nature, cook with natural grown products out of their gardens, like me, and have been intentional about teaching their skills to the next generation. I get great joy out of modeling that lifestyle for others, particularly my nieces and nephews.
That's super cool. Thank you for sharing that. Those are great. Well, as you get to know me more, Rachelle, I'm a fan of a bucket list. Not everybody has a bucket list, but if there were one or two things on your bucket list, I think I might have read you enjoyed traveling. For example, any travel you want to get to or get back to, any adventure, maybe one day you want to write a book. What are a couple things on your bucket list?
I definitely want to go traveling. We went to Portugal last year, and it was my nephew's. He was going to Portugal because he's a wakeboard person, and it was the Worlds, and he got 4th in the world in wakeboard. And so those things are like, oh my gosh, I'm so proud of him, and most of the family came, and, that's a big deal going to Portugal. And so that was really cool to be able to do that. And yeah, that's one thing that I really am proud of also. And then, so then my happy place is also on Nantucket. I love going to Nantucket. It's one of my favorite places to go, but I don't go very often. And I'm hoping that we'll get back there sometime in the next couple of years.
I'm sure you will. That sounds like an amazing, special place for you, and love how you're supporting your family there globally. So thank you for sharing. Just a few more questions here. I'm loving our interview. Thank you for your time. One thing I like to ask, is there a book you'd recommend to our podcast listeners? Doesn't even have to be about buildings. If not a book, maybe a podcast or a cool documentary you've seen lately.
I looked at that, and I happened to reading Cradle to Cradle. That's a long ways away, It's like, and then the other one is Jason, Transformational Thought. Yeah, Jason McLennan.
Oh, McLennan. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So I just happen to have those on my table.
Getting re-inspired. Well, for our listeners, especially if you're somewhat newer to this green building movement, or maybe haven't read those two books, fantastic books. We'll put links in the podcast show notes. The must read, Rachelle. I agree. So if you look back on your career, is there any career advice you wish you'd have known earlier?
Not really. I don't think. I think I'm good. And I've done a lot. And I wanted to just put this down on paper. But there's one thing that many might be as aware as is I'm taking a professional year-long sabbatical right now. And I'm at that time in my life where I feel like I've made numerous successful contributions to the design industry. And I'm thinking about what my next is. I've been exploring and looking at other opportunities that might bring me similar joy and fulfillment that I've had thus far. as a curious and continuous learner, this is a great time in my life to allow myself the time to contemplate and also celebrate the many blessings I have.
Well, it took some bravery. You're doing it. You're in the middle of it. A lot of reflection. Hopefully you feel lighter as you think about what might be next for this next season. Anything else with the sabbatical there you want to share? Because that sounds pretty amazing.
Yeah. Well, it's just, I'm 30 years old, or 30 years in the profession. And I think, this is a time where I am just exploring. And, I've been in several firms, and now I feel like I can, make better contributions, for other things. Yeah.
Well, keep in touch as that plays out. If you need me to open any doors or share ideas, I'd love to. So my last question, you've made an incredible career out of architecture and especially sustainable design and LEED and WELL and all these amazing things. Let's just say someone's listening to your story. They're getting super excited hearing what you've done and how you got to where you are. But maybe they're just now jumping in. Maybe they're a young professional jumping in. Maybe they're someone making a career change. Rachelle, as we come to a close, any words of encouragement to someone just now getting into this industry?
My hope is that this next generation that's out there, and they're going to be graduating from college, and if they want to be architecture or design or whatever they want to do that, I think that they're the ones that are they need us to make sure that they know that it's going to be hard for them in some ways. I don't want to be negative. I think, just letting them know that there are people that they probably need the mentors the most or they might be the best group ever.
Look at that. Wow, you gave us a lot of great advice, great wisdom, some cool stories. And next time I'm in Minneapolis meeting some colleagues up there, I'll have to look you up. And I just want to say thank you for being on the Green Building Matters podcast today. I know everyone's enjoying listening to your story, so thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Green Building Matters podcast. At GBES.com, our mission is to advance the green building movement through best-in-class education and encouragement. Remember, you can go to GBES.com/podcast for any notes and links that we mentioned in today's episode. And you can actually see the other episodes that have already been recorded with our amazing guests. Please tell your friends about this podcast. Tell your colleagues. And if you really enjoyed it, leave a positive review on iTunes. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on next week's episode.